What are you doing differently now than, say, just a month or two ago?
We had most of our money in mortgage-backed securities. But very wisely, about 3 weeks ago, I took it all out and put it into Icelandic banks.
Sadly, all my money was in my own mortgage. I have bailed on that too. I don't go to Starbucks as much. I drive a motorcycle.
This is serious for me because I worked for a nonprofit my whole career, and so we don't have a lot of funds for our kids' college, and I've got an 18-year-old heading off for college next year. So I'm concerned about what the student loan scene is going to look like next year. And I honestly considered, should I get a different job? And then, trying to get an amazing little car loan for my kid who's driving and having trouble with that. The person on the car loan end was discussing it with me. And in my kind of career, last hired is first fired. So I really can't get another job right now in the public sector, I don't think. And so it's challenging. I'm mostly concerned. I would not change anything about what I've done, and I think it's had a great effect for my kids, but my kids are concerned about what does this mean. So for me, the only thing I'm doing differently is worrying about what we're going to do. What will be there for citizens' homes next year? That's what I'm concerned about.
And I piggyback off of the same thing. I'm not worried. I'm concerned about where we're headed, and I have a 12-year-old that's over there and who wants to come to Stanford one day. And I'm hoping for the best that we'll be able to help her. We are encouraging her to do her very best in school. She's doing great. But we are in really tight economic times, and I'm having her as well as myself to look at where can we tighten up and just pay a little more attention so we're not as free spending as we have been at for the time.
Does anyone?
I stupidly haven't been doing anything any different. I've been really good.
Well, I wish my kids would worry more. But, so, a two-doctor family. Doctors are like, if you look at the tortoise in the hair, doctors are sort of the tortoises. So in the good times, we don't go up, which are the hair. And so sort of in the bad times, I think we're sort of good too. So things really don't change quite as much directly, I think, because we don't benefit from the highs. We don't lose so much from the lows. We're very conservative. So
How nice for you.
investment.
It's good to know that your doctor or surgeon is doing just fine.
We lost so much. I will clarify. We lost so much when the stock market went down 7 years ago. I am still able to deduct capital losses. So I have been very conservative investments since that time. So we're.
As the Lieutenant Governor of Arkansas, my salary is public. I earn $42,000 a year. And I just want to say to Jocelyn that her tortoise is faster than my hair will ever. There's not a whole lot of security, job security in politics, so I was already looking for a part-time job. And in recent weeks, I've just accelerated that search.
I want to ask, and I'll start with Alexander actually, I want to ask, given your background and what you came to Stanford for, how was it that you ended up as a very successful filmmaker? Do you think it was it a goal you set? Was it a coincidence? Was it because of circumstances, chance? How did you take that route? And you got to do it in 3 minutes.
I could do it much less. I had just liked movies my whole life, but having first-generation immigrant parents in Omaha, Nebraska, the idea of actually making movies one day, being a film director, was really distant at Stanford, I was a history and Spanish major, knowing that I would apply either the film school or journalism school, Columbia J School. When I was a senior, my parents had been giving me a lot of pressure to go to law school, which I resisted. I took the LSAT, that's as far as it got. And I just always liked movies, and I thought I can't die without, I mean, I didn't know whether my love of them would translate into having talent for it or liking doing it, but when I was accepted to film school, I applied to 5 film schools, got into 4 of them. When I got accepted, I thought I have to try this, because even if it turns out I suck at it, I can't die without having tried it. And parents were telling me stupid things like, why don't you go to law school first? You know, that. Law school first, so you always have that to fall back on. So I got to film school, and again, it was kind of always, it was both a lifelong dream and something I came at step by step, because I didn't ever really believe it somehow. And actually at Stanford, I didn't even think about being a film director. I thought about just getting into film school. It's like, I thought it was just cool to go to film school. Yeah, it's hard to get in, all that kind of stuff. So, anyway, long story short, I just found that I liked doing it and had at least enough talent at it that I could build on. And also, I found that I made comedies, and not a lot of people make comedies, and so that opens up the way a little bit. So,
You've got some of your classmates. Did anyone think that Alexander would be doing what he was doing today? Yeah?
Did he go around filming you at Stanford?
Is there any footage we should know?
but I purposely didn't do any film stuff here at all. I didn't take anything. In fact, I went to go see Ron Alexander, who was one of the film teachers in the communications department, and said, I was thinking about going to film school. What advice do you have for me? And he said, don't do it. It's this sort of, oh, let me dissuade everyone, and then the strong ones will survive within my dissuasion. His line was, yeah, anyone who wants to go to film school should have his head read. And anyway, fuck yeah.
You feel like you're at the top of the hill. What do you shoot for next?
I think the work I've done so far is minor. I mean, that sounds humble, but it's actually very ego film, I think. I still feel like I'm just getting started. Each film, I think, look, on the one hand, I look at a lot of my colleagues from film school and their careers, which have not happened. And I'm totally aware of that. We're still very good friends. On the other hand, I think of how many more films I'd like to be making or would like to have made. It's a very slow career. So I feel like I'm still just getting started.
I'm going to ask Bill, because as a Rhodes Scholar, that can be a fairly life-changing event for someone. Were you on a different track until that point, or?
Actually, as I sort of mentioned in the beginning, I can't maintain a consistent path at all. So, you know, out of England, I joined McKinsey & Company and really enjoyed it, but, you know, stayed there 3 years and went on and did something different because the opportunity presented itself. So, you know, I literally could not tell you 5 years from now what even the goal is. But I think if you see what's out there in front of you and you see what's possible, and you go hard at what is immediately in front of you as possible, then, you know, things work out pretty well. And it's worked so far. You know, in 2 years, the voters get to decide how well it's working out for them. And, we'll go from there.
Jocelyn, you mentioned go with your heart more than your head, except if you look, you know, you went to medical school. It seemed like a lot of it was quite deliberate. Is that right? Or?
Well, when I came to Stanford, actually, I think I thought about going into journalism, mainly because I liked English a lot. I had some great English high school teachers. But my dad was a doctor, and he loved what he did. So he used to bring me to work with him. I think so. It was always sort of in the back of my mind that I'd be pre-med, and it used to be that way. I don't know if it's that way anymore, but once you started in the pre-med track here, it was kind of like, had a life of its own. So you kind of just went with it. But I found a great major. I really liked it. It was microbiology. It was a tiny major. I think there were like maybe 8 or 10 of us that graduated that year. I don't know if anyone else was in my major that's here, but tiny major. But really loved it. So, I mean, that was part of it. And in fact, I was really, it seems odd, but I was really excited to be a medical school. I really liked it. So I guess that was part of my heart, but yeah, I had these in my head too. I actually, he mentioned something about regret, but that's actually probably really my motto with anything, like, is that when I'm deciding whether to do something or not, like move or like jump off a cliff or whatever, something, it's always, I don't want to regret not having done it. So in that moment, when I'm thinking, am I going to regret that I say no, that I just backed off and didn't do it? I always say, will I regret? And if I say yes, I will regret, then I just do it. So there's tons of stuff. I mean, if you ask anyone, that's the way I work. Actually, I don't want to ever regret.
My sort of memories of Stanford, because of the circle of friends that I had, was sort of, I thought everybody was either a hum bio major or an engineering major. I don't know, it was just like those are the 2 routes in life. But Megan and Charlene were psychology majors. I want to just hear both from you, maybe Charlene first, about whether your life journey was more planned or really a result of luck, circumstances.
It was planned. Basically, I knew from the 6th grade that that was what I needed to do. I always made a good connection with people. They with me, and I just felt like that was my direction. And I continued on, and like I said, when I got here, Zimbardo was my first experience to psychology, and what an experience it was. And so I went on with Michelle and Bandura, and just the greats of the greats. And I learned a lot. It really enhanced what I feel now has shown itself to be a rather innate talent. I've worked with babies. I mean, my first job was investigating child abuse and neglect in New York City. And then now I'm doing therapy with adolescents and severely emotionally disturbed children. And so I've always done this type of work where I'm connecting some way, somehow, with people, and mainly children. That's the focus. And so I always knew, and I felt really honored and blessed to know what it is that I'm here for to do on this planet, because a lot of us go stumbling around throughout life and not knowing what it is we're here to do. And I knew, always have known, and it just feels good. Everything that I start to do is like Alexander said, it's something new, and I'm learning something else. I have someone that now wants to go into opening up a domestic violence facility. And so I also write grants, and she wanted me to write some grants and to do some counseling with the parents and ask me what I can do with the children. So it'll be a new type of, because I've never worked solely with that population before. So I'm always learning. There's always something else out there. So I'm very happy in what I do, and I just keep looking forward to whatever the new avenues will be down that career path.
It was challenging for me at Stanford because I love the psychology courses, but a lot of the research was very academic, and I found myself craving more service, direct service kind of opportunities, which at the time were difficult to find on campus. And so I remember like biking in the rain and going off campus to different mental health jobs, or working with the autistic kids. We did have some good SWAPC courses, but what I'm excited by for the current Stanford students is how much that has changed in public service, and there's a lot more support. You don't have to go, and it's not so difficult now to become involved in public service. It's much more emphasized, so I'm real jazzed about that. But I have a quick, funny Zimbardo abnormal psychology story. I'm from New York, and I came out here, and they had this lecture series, and it was the Madness in the Arts class, and there was these actors who came in that day, and they were doing all this kind of, artsy, and that woo, and the music, and the lights are down, and all of a sudden this seat started to shake. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're trying to make us feel like we're mad. How'd they do that? And then someone's like, did you feel the earthquake? I had no context for earthquake from the so, but I always knew I would do social work. It was not until there was a lecturer from Arizona State University who put on the psych class board, you know, all the jobs you could do with your psych. It was a very practical, non-Stanford typical class, and you know, like you could do this, you could do this, you could be a social worker. And it's like late in my junior year, I'm like, oh, okay. And so that's who it is. So it was a very circuitous path, but I always knew that I wanted to be.
Joe, you were a hum bio major. You're in television production. What were you thinking back then?
Unlike that, I had a more circuitous route to where I'm at right now, which is, of course, many majors, declared majors, ending up with hum bio. It's like, what was I thinking? Which, of course, leads directly to retail. Of course, which then I found out you have to work holidays. That wasn't going to work out, so I did. Of course, that leads to real estate in San Francisco. And then, of course, that leads to business school. So I went back east and did 2 years of that, only to realize I'm not very good at business, and I want to get out of that too. So then I got a creative job in LA, and I am so happy doing that. So it took, what, 10 years to figure that out? Where were you, Alexander? to guide me in the creative world.
Where was I?
I was like, Alexander Payne was in my class? Oh my God, I could have been his assistant somewhere. You did great work. Anyway, so it's just a path that leads you to your passion, and that should always be what grounds you. And you should just have fun doing what you're doing. You know, when I hear Charlene speak about kids and Megan helps people, I mean, those are the real heroes. And we're just having fun. I'm just having fun. I mean, I don't think I'll cry.
Steve, was there much deliberateness in your path?
I knew ever since I was a small child that I wanted to be a comic insomniac. No, unfortunately, when Alexander's parents struck out with him, they called me. And they said, you know, you really ought to go to law school. It's something you'll always have. So I have it, but I haven't looked at it today. In the car. So I went, I mean, knowing when I was here I wanted to be some sort of writer, but I didn't know what that meant or what time. So I was in law school, and while I was in law school, I was living next door to Second City, and it took me 2 years, but finally I worked up the courage to go over there and enroll in the training center. So then I was in law school and doing improv, and then I, so I was happy a couple nights a week. And then I moved to San Francisco, so that got put on hold, and I was practicing law, and I had a trial all to myself when I was 27 or something, which doesn't happen. And it's like, that's what you want. And I won, and I got home, and I just collapsed. I thought, oh my God, this is like, I can't do this anymore. This is awful. And then I ended up moving back to Chicago. Now I was doing improv again and teaching law, and at the same time enrolling in professional bartender school on South Wabash Avenue in Chicago. So it's a direct path. And I think I saw so entertaining at the No Exit Cafe in Rogers Park while teaching law, while learning how to be a bartender, and then finally moving back out here and meeting Charles Baxter and hearing about the MFA program at Warren Wilson College, and at 40 getting an MFA in fiction writing. Clear, but I'm there now, and what else? Yeah, and what I wouldn't have predicted was the whole kid thing, how that consumes your life in great ways, and in just terrible ways.
I always thought that Steve was going to be I thought you were going to be a politician, and that sounds like the perfect record.
No, it's not too late.
Come on down to Arkansas, Steve. Come on down, brother, I'll set you up.
Are you making a living fiction right now? What do you do?
I am not. I wish I knew someone in the business who would look at a spec script.
There's a pile of them over there.
No, I'm not making a living at it. I teach fiction writing workshops around the Bay Area, and I try and sell stories to literary magazines. If anyone saw the 2006 Crazy Horse Fiction Prize,